in the YTBC fuckery, not limited to, but such as disrespecting the greats and the current fighters.
What up, everybody in the YTBC? So I'm just gonna go ahead and get into the topic of the video. In this episode of Injustice, we're gonna talk about how the love of money is the root of all evil. Now, I don't have much time, so I'm just gonna get right into this fuckery. So as of recent, I did a video. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description about Nicholas Walters, asking for 100% of the purse to fight Lomachenko, and how it's ridiculous to expect another fellow pro athlete to, basically fight for free. So I'm not gonna, go over all that all over again. I'll put the link in the description if I remember. If not, it's a fairly recent video that I did. So, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. So let's go ahead and take a look at, some instances in the past where greed has kind of, where we've seen things like this happen. And hopefully this one I'll remember to do the link in the description. But basically, not near the beginning, but maybe 5 months ago, I did a video about how Canelo Alvarez was getting the shaft on the Cotto fight because Cotto was taking 75% of the purse. So, as a side note, that does go to show you that I have stuck up for Canelo. So I'm not just a Canelo hater. That's directed toward you, Ray, because you're just a dumbass who refuses to acknowledge that I'm fair. The only conclusion that you will possibly draw about me is that I'm a Canelo hater, but yet I've actually stuck up for Canelo. So, but anyways, that's just a little side note. But, it was, in my opinion, no professional fighter should get less than 30% of the purse. I just think that that's as low as it should go. I don't care how much of the A side you are. But, you see how Canelo was hard done by Cotto, and then you see that, fast forward to after when Cotto beats Canelo, he wants to get a 90-10 split, which is just absurd, against Triple G. So, I mean, you see how, one diva just basically birthed another diva. Canelo didn't used to talk like the way he's talking now, talking about that he's not a true middleweight, but yet he's gonna come into the ring at 180 pounds, 190 pounds, if it feels like it. He never used to talk like that. I used to have a lot more respect for Canelo until he started this diva shit. And he was already starting it a little bit before he beat Cotto, but he went hardcore diva as soon as he won the WBC middleweight title at 155 pounds. So, that's one instance where we see that, that greed and the love of money has caused some harm or disservice. So, but this is definitely something that's not new. When I did my Nicholas Walters video, I said, are you gonna, what's next? Because, we heard the 90-10 split from Canelo. Now we're hearing 100% from Walters. And I'm like, what's next? Is a fighter going to have to owe you in order to get a fight? And that brings me to a situation that happened decades ago with one of my favorite all-time greats, which is Joe Louis. Joe Louis, in order for him to get the... well, first off, before I even get into that, the first thing I want to say is, back in the time of Joe Louis, basically, if you were a black fighter going into the ring with a white fighter, you were basically considered B-side automatically. Didn't matter how good you were, didn't matter how much of a following you had. You were the B-side just because of the color of your skin. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I don't know this for sure, but I honestly think that I think that because Joe Louis wasn't he was a lighter black fighter, I think that's another thing that kind of helped him to get his title shot. I think if had he been darker, had he been the skin color of, let's say, Jack Johnson, he wouldn't have even gotten a title shot. Because, and this is another thing, I've heard big YouTube channels say that racism in boxing is at an all-time high, and I have to disagree. Because at Joe Louis's time, it didn't matter. It's like I said, it didn't matter. If you were a black fighter getting into the ring with a white fighter, you were automatically be what today we call the B-side. Okay? So, in order for him to get that title fight with James J. Braddock, who, if you don't know who that is, there's a movie called The Cinderella Man. It's all about him. I would recommend watching it. It's a really good movie starring Russell Crowe, if I remember correctly. And it's about the life of, it's about the story of James J. Braddock. Not his whole life, is just, a particular part of his life. But anyways, James J. Braddock, at the time, being that, this was, many decades ago, it was a very different time. And even at that time, I don't even think racism in boxing was at an all-time high. I actually think that was in the time of Jack Johnson. But this era of boxing that I'm talking about, racism was a much higher than it is today. Okay? So, in order for Joe Louis to get that title shot against James J. Braddock, he had to sign a contract stating that he would give 10% of his earnings for the next 10 years of his career. Kind of sounds like what I said about what's next. Are you gonna owe a fighter? And see, if that ends up happening in today's day and age, we're moving backwards. James J. Braddock ended up getting about $150,000 out of Joe Louis. James J. Braddock actually retired after Joe Louis, if I'm not mistaken. And why should he continue fighting? He's guaranteed 10% of this man's money for the next 10 years. And I read somewhere that given inflation, it's estimated to be about $7 million in today's money, because James J. Braddock, he was fighting during the time of the Great Depression. So, it's just ridiculous how, we may end up going back to that. And it's not poetic justice. Anybody who wants to say that it's poetic justice I'm sorry, but you're full of shit, because Lomachenko is not even an American. He's from another country. So, how in the world would that be poetic justice? Nicholas Walters trying to screw him over when he's not even from America, where we were allowing this fuckery to happen. But see, and in my opinion, I think Joe Louis's family is actually due reparations for that, in my opinion. Because it's very wrong that Joe Louis, just because he was an African American, had to pay out in order to get his title shot. It's like I said, these guys have to train, for the same amount of time. They have to put in a lot of work to be in the best shape that they can be come fight night. So this is just the injustice that I'm talking about. And it looks like we are doomed to repeat that if something doesn't happen soon. It seems like pretty soon we're going to have diva demands where not only does the A side expect you not to get paid, but they want you to pay them. And that's not right. That's not right at all. So, it's like I said, I don't like guaranteed purses, but that's the landscape of boxing. So, it is what it is. So, I mean, being that is the landscape of boxing, I think that it should be illegal for someone to try to give their opponent less than 30% of the purse. That's the way that I feel personally. It's wrong. I just don't see how it could be right. And you have boxing fans today that want to justify this behavior, and I think it's unacceptable. And where there's injustice, the Hall of Justice is there to speak out. That's what we're here for. And I'm speaking out against this fuckery. So, but anyways, to all my subscribers, anybody who watches my videos on a regular basis, or if you just so happen to stumble upon this video, I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day. Peace.
And I'ma go hard.